Well, guys, I have really wanted to be doing something very special for our marriages. When you're a mentor and your life is so involved in others, you can get so consumed in your job, you kind of forget your spouse and don't do what you really ought to do there. So I just want to be brief and give you these. We're doing several in a row, and I just want to do that briefly. But I want to talk to you today. You know, you're a mentor, you're a world evangelist, you're a church planter, you're doing all the things you're doing, and you need to make your wife a priority. And I want to talk to you about making your spouse your priority. And I want to use a story from Genesis chapter 29. And you don't have to look it up. I'll walk you through the story. But in Genesis chapter 29, we're talking about Jacob and all the things that are going on with Jacob. And we're going to talk about his family. And so I just want to kind of walk you through a few things that you can think about. And so I want to give you, let me just check here. I'm only going to give you three things to consider today. And I want to challenge you with them. And that is, number one, meet the needs of your spouse, whether they meet yours or not. You do right, whether they do right back or not. You're on the field and you're busy. Wives can get their feelings hurt and husbands can get their feelings hurt. And we've got to work on it. In Genesis chapter 29, in verse 10, it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And so I just really want to challenge you to work at helping meet the needs of your spouse. Rachel couldn't feed her sheep because she needed help with the large stone that covered the well. Jacob did not need to be told what she needed because he was attentive. He was watching. Could I just say, and gentlemen, ladies are pretty bad about not telling us what they need unless they get to the point of becoming nagging wives, you know, and they're always just whining and nagging, and you don't want that. So you need to be attentive and see what she needs so she doesn't have to ask. And ladies, you need to be attentive and see what your husband needs. The message today is not about you having a list to correct your spouse, but to look at you and your actions. So how can I make Betty my priority? How can I anticipate her needs before she ever mentions them? I want to make my wife a priority. Jacob jumped in and helped Rachel move the stone and water the sheep, and that was it. So are you attentive, watching, and caring? God has already met your needs before you even realized your need. You know, that's the beautiful thing. And we're trying to be like Jesus, and he has already met our need. He is the author and the finisher of our faith. I didn't even know about salvation, and he took care of it, and he did it. He tasted death for all men. Salvation is a gift waiting on you to receive when you realize your need and to accept it. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you about making your spouse your priority is that you would look at it and say, how can I make her my priority? Now, ladies, so many times the children become your priority. And so you kind of put the husband. So when, we have four children, and boy, when Betty and I first got married, I was 18, just turned 19 3 days later, and I was like everything to her. Her world revolved around taking care of me. A couple of years later, Chris came along, and then I was number two. And then Stephanie and I was number three, and then with David, I was number five, and she would deny all that. We'd laugh and cut up about it. You know what I'm talking about. But in other words, the wife can make the children a bigger priority. But the husband can make the ministry a bigger priority. Language learning and cross-cultural understanding and all the things that we're doing, we can get more involved in that than we are taking care of our wife. And so I just wanted to say to you as a little reminder today, meet her needs, meet his needs, make them your priority. Another thing out of this little story that makes me think that we might want to use is Genesis chapter 29 and verse 20. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her. So number two, I would think you can show your wife her importance, show your husband his importance by the investment of time. When you want to make your spouse a priority, they will get time. I know. You're like, duh. Everybody knows that, Austin. What? It's a big deal. But it is so easy. And I failed so much in this as I was raising my family and taking care of my children. One day, my oldest son said to me, the Peruvians have a dad, we don't. And though he was angry and he was trying to hurt me, and later on we fixed all that, but there was truth in what he said. Without a doubt, there was truth in it. And so we want to be very careful. Jacob saw her, Rachel, his future wife, and he said, boy, I like her. She is worth the investment of 7 years of his life. Now, I'll be honest with you. I doubt I was that patient. I doubt that I don't know that I would have invested like that. But that's what we want to do is we want to say to her, you are worth my time. Men are bad about planting a flag when they dominate and own something. So while you're dating, it's like, I got to get her. So you do everything you can to please her. But once you plant your flag on that mountain and say, this belongs to me, you're off to conquer another mountain. And she becomes second in your life. And most of the time, women aren't as bad about that as men, I don't think, at least not in our marriage. So I want to challenge you. She's worth the investment. He loved her so much that 7 years seemed like but a few days to him. The time went flying by. Would your family feel that they are a priority because of the way you manage your time? Would your spouse feel like he or she is a priority because of the way you manage your time? Old-fashioned days, back in the old days, husband pulls in the driveway, the wife comes out to meet him, she's excited to see him. Today we both live hurried and busied lives. The man would come in, the children would come yelling, daddy, 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 and it was like big thing dad came home. But today sometimes we rarely sit down together, and so we want to think about that. Here's some questions for you to consider. Do you need to rearrange your schedule? Do you need to drop some of your commitments? Some of us are so worried about building a ministry. But let me explain something to you. You're going to leave that ministry, you're going to go to another ministry, and by the way, as soon as you're out the door, you're forgotten. But there's one person that won't. That's your spouse. And you're going to be together all your life. And that's your children second. And your children and your grandchildren and your in-laws. And so time. Maybe drop some of your commitments. Maybe arrange or change your lifestyle so that you can have more time for each other. Maybe we should take a spiritual time inventory and decide what's important in our lives and set up some priorities. That's why I always tell the men, 40, 60, 70, 80 hours. 80 hours is way up there. If you do 70 hours, that's 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I mean, that's really pushing it. You've got to have time to be with your wife and your children and your husband and your children. So let's develop some rituals. Maybe eating together. Making sure we all sit down and have supper or lunch or breakfast together. Holding hands every chance you get. Kissing after the prayer. Betty and I have been doing that for 48 years. Having family devotions. Kiss when you leave, kiss when you return. Have dates with your children. Have dates with your spouse. Say you love each other and hug and touch. Let's be expressive. Let's be expressive. Look for romantic things to do for your spouse. Write love notes. But look for things you can do to say, boy, I love you and you're special to me. How have you shown God that he's your priority? You know, you seek him first. You spend time in prayer. You make God a priority. You need to rearrange your life if you can't. We got to put God as a priority. But we got to do the same thing with our spouse and with our children, that they would become a priority. We don't want to lose our family. We don't want the ministry to creep in and push our spouse to the side. We don't want that to happen. I'm sure you've heard that story about, if you don't give an inch, or they'll take a mile. Maybe you've heard the story about, I think it was Aladdin, and he's in the tent, and they camp that night. It's wind's blowing, it's cold, and the dust is blowing. And the camel's talking to him and says, could I at least stick my nose in the tent so it wouldn't suffer? And he lets him stick the nose in the tent. And when he wakes up the next morning, the camel's in the tent and he's outside the tent. So the idea is, don't even let it get started. And so what ends up happening is you and I, unconsciously and without intention, start giving all of our time to other things that are far less important. Number three, I got four. I said I had three, but it's four. Number three, we can't allow obstacles to hinder our love. In Genesis 29:30, he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet another 7 years. Jacob gets deceived. He gets the wrong woman. He gets Leah. And he realizes, but that's okay. She's worth another 7 years. And so in total, he works for one woman for 14 years of his life. That is a long, long time. And he does that. Setbacks and problems and adversity will often mess up your marriage because you're focused on the wrong thing. You're focused on you. You're focused on you. You're focused on your ministry. You're focused on your hobby. You're not focused on your spouse. Don't criticize your spouse or allow others to do so. Fight fair. You know what could hurt more than anything. Don't say it. Give your spouse some space. Don't be selfish in your relationship. Serve God together as a family. If we love each other, we're going to invest time. If we love each other, nothing's going to stop our love. If we love each other, we are going to meet the needs of our spouse. Let overcoming problems express your love. Let overcoming problems express your love. You're going to be in fights. You're going to lose a child, or your daughter might get raped, or your children might run away from home, but you stick together and you overcome problems together. No matter what it costs. And that's really the relationship you're going to have with God too, but for the sake of time, I'll move on. Love regardless of what your spouse can do for you. Love regardless of what your spouse could do for you. In chapter 29 and verse 31, the Lord saw that Leah was hated. He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. She couldn't have babies. He loved her anyway. Jacob loved Rachel, even though she couldn't have children. She feels that her worth was devalued, but he keeps loving her without regard. He encourages her with positive comments, like Hannah's husband did. Hannah's husband, Samuel's mother, Elkanah, I think his name is, he says, honey, you're worth more than 10,000 children. Love me, it's okay. Am I not better to you than 10 sons, he says? 1 Samuel 1:8. Accept your spouse as they are. Don't ever hold back. Don't have any qualms. Don't have any pullback. Meditate on the good things about your family and your spouse. Meditate and say, boy, think about her and think about the way she moves and talks and acts. Think about your husband. Think about the way he works and the way he prays. Meditate. So what happens is when you think positive thoughts about your spouse, when accidentally you say something, positive stuff going to come out, because what's inside's what's going to come out. Have a funeral. Literally think of what you would say at the funeral. Be honest. If you think you will act right. You see, it's amazing how at the funeral we all love our spouse. We love our mother. You love everybody when they die. It's like all of a sudden you decide, I'm not going to think about the negatives. I will think about the positives. So do that now. In your mind, say, what would I say? And do the right thing. If you think the right thing will come out. If they died, you'd do anything to get them back. You'd remember all the good times. You'd tell everyone about their good character. Let's just do that now. Seek God, not for what you can get, but because you love him, because he first loved you. Meditate on what he's done. Think about him. I wanted to just say a few things to you tonight and say to you, it's nighttime where I am, but I just want to say to you, make your spouse your priority. You're on a mission field. You're a mentor. And you're thinking to yourself that it's not that important. My family, you just kind of relegate it to the side. Don't do that. Don't do that. Make your spouse your priority. That's the only way you're going to really be a good mentor. You're mentoring by them watching you as much as what you say. Build a good family. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. God bless you.